The sun hung low over the isthmus, its rays glinting off the sea like shattered glass. You could smell the salt in the air, mixed with the sharp tang of olive groves and the distant smoke from sacrificial altars. Then came the sounds, drums beating a relentless rhythm, flutes wailing in eerie harmony, crowds murmuring in a wave that built to a roar. And there, in the center of it all, stood a figure in imperial purple, his face painted with triumph, his eyes burning with something darker. Beside him, veiled in silk that whispered against the wind, trembled a young form, barely more than a child, dressed as an empress but born a slave. The ceremony unfolded like a nightmare, masked as celebration. Vows were spoken, rings exchanged, and the emperor leaned in for a kiss that sealed not love, but possession. As the cheers erupted, no one dared whisper the truth. This bride had been stolen from the streets, altered by the knife, and paraded as a trophy. But that kiss was just the beginning. What followed would expose the depths of one man's hunger and the machine that fed it. What you're about to hear involves sexual violence, forced alteration of bodies, and the systematic exploitation of the vulnerable. These events are documented in ancient accounts, though details vary, and they remain disturbing. If you need to step away, I understand. For those staying, we focus on understanding the system behind it all, not exploiting the suffering. This wasn't a simple tale of one emperor's madness. This was a machine of empire, oiled by power and fueled by unchecked desire, where human lives became currency in a game of dominance. In the year we now call 67 AD, Nero, ruler of Rome, embarked on a tour of Greece that blended spectacle with horror. Historians like Suetonius and Dio Cassius paint a picture of extravagance, but beneath the games and proclamations lay a darker truth: the commodification of bodies. Nero didn't just conquer lands, he claimed souls. Accounts speak of thousands of young Greeks forced into his service. Though historians debate the exact figures, estimates range from hundreds in direct attendance to over 5,000 in his broader entourage of performers, attendants, and unwilling companions. This wasn't conquest in the traditional sense. This was erasure, a system where imperial whim turned free people into objects, virgins into vessels for pleasure, all under the guise of divine right. To grasp how it happened, we must go back to the forge, where this emperor was shaped, and see the tensions that ignited his reign. Imagine Rome in the mid-1st century, a sprawling beast of marble and mud, where the Tiber snaked through forums buzzing with merchants and senators. The empire stretched from Britain's mists to Egypt's sands, home to millions, governed by a line of Caesars who balanced bread, games, and iron-fisted control. Nero came to power in 54 AD, at just 16, after the suspicious death of his stepfather Claudius Poison. Some whispered, courtesy of his ambitious mother Agrippina. The early years showed promise. Guided by advisors like the philosopher Seneca and the praetorian prefect Burrus, Nero lowered taxes, reformed courts, and hosted grand spectacles. But cracks appeared early. The empire faced threats: rebellions in Britain under Boudica, wars with Parthia in the east, and internal plots from jealous nobles. Greece, long a Roman province since 146 BC, simmered with cultural pride, its philosophers and artists a jewel in the imperial crown. Nero adored Greek culture, the poetry, the athletics, the stage, yet his love twisted into appropriation, a hunger to possess what he admired. Nero wasn't born a monster, he was molded by one. His mother Agrippina dominated his youth, marrying Claudius to secure her son's path, even allegedly seducing Nero to bind him closer. Trauma marked him young. His father died when he was 3, leaving him in a web of court intrigue. One formative moment came in 55 AD, when Nero poisoned his stepbrother Britannicus during a banquet. The boy convulsed, foam at his mouth, while Nero coolly blamed epilepsy. It was his first taste of eliminating rivals, a lesson in power's cold calculus. Then, in 59 AD, Agrippina's influence waned. Nero ordered her killed, staging a boat accident that failed, then sending assassins to finish the job. She met her end with defiance, reportedly pointing to her womb and saying, "Strike here." This matricide haunted him, but it also freed him. Without her shadow, Nero's appetites grew unchecked. He married Poppaea Sabina in 62 AD, a beauty who fueled his excesses until her death 3 years later, kicked in the stomach during a rage, pregnant with his child. Her loss broke something in him, leading to desperate attempts to replace her. These moments didn't create evil. They revealed the system that allowed it, where emperors answered to no one, and lives were disposable. And then, the Great Fire of 64 AD ravaged Rome. Flames leaped from shop to shop, consuming 10 of 14 districts over 6 days. Whispers blamed Nero, saying he fiddled while the city burned, though the fiddle didn't exist yet. Perhaps he sang. He rebuilt lavishly, constructing the Domus Aurea, a golden palace with lakes and groves. To deflect blame, he targeted Christians, executing them in gruesome shows. But the fire's aftermath strained finances, pushing Nero toward the provinces for tribute and distraction. Greece called to him, a land of legends where he could play God among the gods. In late 66 AD, he set sail, entourage in tow, ready to compete in games and collect what he desired. This turning point crystallized his cruelty. The tour wasn't just a vacation, it was a harvest. The air in Corinth thickened with anticipation that spring of 67 AD. Temples dotted the landscape, their columns stark against the blue sky, while markets hummed with traders from Athens and Sparta. Nero arrived with pomp, his ships unloading treasures, soldiers, and a retinue that swelled the local population. Among them were the Augustiani, 5,000 young men handpicked for their vigor, dressed in uniform, trained to applaud his every move. They weren't slaves, but their service blurred lines coerced by imperial favor. They embodied the system's hold on even the elite. But deeper in the shadows lurked the true captives, drawn from Greek towns and villages, selected for beauty and youth. Historians debate the exact number, but estimates suggest thousands were rounded up, virgins among them, to serve in his private quarters. This wasn't random lust. This was logistics, a network of scouts and officials identifying talent for the emperor's pleasure. One such victim stood out, a boy named Sporus, perhaps 14 or 15, with delicate features that echoed Poppaea's. He hailed from a modest Greek family, maybe a potter's son or a merchant's ward, living a simple life before the imperial gaze fell upon him. Sporus played in the streets, dreamed of the games, helped with chores, human details that made him real, not just a name in scrolls. He had soft curls, wide eyes, a laugh that carried on the breeze. Before the horror, he was just a boy, innocent in a world that valued such purity as currency. The confrontation unfolded in a villa overlooking the sea. Nero's guards had scouted Sporus during a festival, noting his resemblance to the lost empress. Word reached the emperor, and orders followed swift as a blade. Sporus was seized one evening, torn from his home amid cries from his family. Bound and transported, he arrived trembling before Nero, who circled him like a buyer at auction. "You remind me of her," Nero murmured, his voice a mix of grief and greed. The demand was clear: submit to transformation, become the replacement. Sporus, terrified, refused at first pleas, tears, a desperate no. But resistance meant death, or worse, for his kin. The system kicked in, eunuchs and surgeons prepared, incentives whispered to compliant officials. The act itself was swift, restrained in telling but irreversible. In a chamber lit by lamps, Sporus was held down, the knife flashing. He emerged altered, a eunuch dressed in women's robes, his boyhood stolen to fit an emperor's fantasy. Nero called him my wife, parading him as such. This wasn't about one boy. This was about the machine slavery's gears turning, where bodies were modified like property, virgins defiled to sate power. Word spread through whispers in taverns, fear rippling across Greece. Families hid their children, but the net was wide. Modern parallels echo in human trafficking rings, where vulnerability meets exploitation, reminding us the system evolves but endures. But that wasn't the worst part. As the tour progressed, the escalation revealed the machinery's full scope. Shift to the perspective of a witness, say a Greek official tasked with implementation. Call him the procurator, a man of scrolls and seals caught in the web. He saw the lists, names, ages, descriptions compiled by local magistrates under threat of reprisal. Incentives flowed, promotions for those who delivered, ruin for those who delayed. The persecution spread from Corinth to Olympia, then Athens, a geographic shift that blanketed the province. Whole communities felt the chill, villages emptied of their youth as carts rolled toward the imperial camp. One breather amid the tension, Picture a quiet evening by the shore, where the procurator paused, watching waves lap the sand. An ironic detail: the same sea that carried Greek myths of heroes now bore witnesses to this mockery. Nero, meanwhile, indulged in games, winning every contest through bribes and fear. But behind the victories, the captives served. Accounts describe orgies where young Greeks, virgins included, were forced into roles, their innocence shattered. Not gore, but implication. Laughter turning to silence, eyes averted. The system thrived on scale thousands, by some estimates, funneled into pleasure quarters, a dark contrast to the public freedom Nero proclaimed for Greece. He granted tax relief, citizenship to judges, but it was accounting, not mercy, gifts, to mask the taking. She had 3 days left. She didn't know it yet. In Act 3, the climax built slowly, time stretching like a bowstring. At Olympia, under the statue of Zeus, Nero drove his chariot, crashing but declared victor. The air hummed with forced cheers, dust choking the throat, the sun beating down. Sporus watched from a litter, veiled, his role cemented in a mock wedding that shocked even hardened courtiers. But the peak came at the Isthmian Games, where Nero announced Greece's freedom from Rome's direct rule, a grand gesture amid his private predations. The act peaked in private tents, where the emperor's desires reached frenzy. Implication: heavy, bodies bound, commands barked, the machine's reach exposed in cries muffled by guards. Yet the crack appeared overreach bred resentment. Greek pride, long subdued, stirred. Whispers of rebellion filtered back to Rome, where senators plotted. Sporus, symbol of the broken, endured, but the system faltered as Nero's paranoia grew. He returned to Rome in 68 AD, triumphant yet isolated, the tour's excesses sowing his downfall. In the aftermath, the machine ground on, but without its master. Rebellions erupted: Galba in Spain, Vindex in Gaul. Nero fled, abandoned by guards, and took his life in a villa outside Rome, stabbing his throat with help from a secretary. "What an artist dies in me," he gasped. Sporus survived briefly, passed to pretenders like Nymphidius Sabinus, then Otho, who treated him as empress. But in 69 AD, amid chaos, Sporus chose death over further humiliation, slitting his wrists. The Greek captives scattered, some freed, others sold, communities scarred. Power shifted to the Flavians, who demonized Nero to legitimize their rule. Long-term, his reign marked the Julio-Claudian end, ushering in stability. One ironic detail: the documents meant to celebrate his tour became evidence condemning him in history's court. Modern discovery brings it tangible. In the Renaissance, artists stumbled into the Domus Aurea, buried under earth, its grottos revealing frescoes of excess nymphs, satyrs, scenes hinting at debauchery. Antonio da Sangallo, the Younger, sketched them in the 1,480 seconds, influencing Michelangelo and Raphael. Excavations in the 20th century, led by figures like Giacomo Boni, uncovered more: mosaics, baths, proof of the palace's scale. What it proved: Nero's world was real, his appetites etched in stone. A human touch, the workers who found it marveled at colors preserved, connecting past to present. Why it matters now? This teaches about power's corruption, how systems enable abuse. One grounded parallel modern autocrats who exploit the vulnerable, hiding behind spectacles while bodies pile up. The universal truth: humanity persists through resistance, whether a boy's silent defiance or a province's enduring spirit. Empires fall, but stories survive. Echo the opening. The sun sets on the isthmus, the veil lifts, revealing not triumph, but tragedy. The captives were meant to disappear, erased by whim, but they didn't. They live in chronicles, archaeology, memory, and now they're here with you, because you chose to listen. If this story moved you, subscribe for more dives into history's shadows. We remember, so it doesn't repeat.